2 minutes downside 8 o'clock. It is Citizen FM 93.7 and you're listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. This is the big talk, and this is where we attempt, like a people, brothers and sisters, to solve the challenges that we do face as a nation. And yes, our big talk under Super Citizen at Sunrise this morning is what must be done to eliminate the poverty trap in Nigeria. It says that when your neighbors, let me start with this, okay? Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. When you go to bed with a full stomach and your neighbor goes to bed with a hungry stomach, it is only a question of time before you look like food to him. My name is KEMI, ASEKIUN, and of course, this is Citizen FM 93.7. A quick break, and when we do come back, I will be speaking with my guest as we take a look at what must be done to eliminate the poverty trap in Nigeria. Stay with me, don't go anywhere. Thank you. 5 minutes downside 8 o'clock. Citizen FM 93.7 Super Citizen at Sunrise. My name is KEMI ASEKIUN, and I'm hosting you this morning on the Super Citizen at Sunrise. Right now, we're looking at what must be done to eliminate the poverty trap in Nigeria. The federal government, through the National Bureau of Statistics on Thursday, said the 130 million Nigerians are poor. In its 2022 Multidimensional Poverty Index survey released in Abuja on Thursday, the NBS said the figure represents 63% of the nation's population. It added that the poverty index is mostly experienced in rural areas, especially in the north, with women and children being the most affected. The survey was conducted by the NBS, the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, NASCO, the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, the United Nations Children Funds, UNICEF, and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, OPHI. It was guarded that the measure used to calculate the figure was based on Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPI, with 5 components of health, living standard, education, security, and unemployment. Now, according to the survey, over 50% of children across the country are affected by poverty. In his remarks, the Statistician General of the Federation, Mr. Adeyemi, noted that 56,610 households were surveyed and in areas such as health, education, living standards, food, security, water reliability, unemployment, security shocks, and school attendance were considered. Now, while the Multidimensional Poverty Index stood at 27% in Ondo State, the figure is estimated at 90% in Sokoto State. Well, all this and more I will be discussing with my guest this morning, Mr. Emmanuel Osemeka. A very good morning to you, Emmanuel.
How are you doing today?
I'm very fine, thank you. Emmanuel Osemeka is the country director of Social Welfare Network Initiative. Emmanuel, these figures are scary, and as they say, facts are facts and facts are sacred. But the fact that they are facts make it even more scary. What do we have to do? What is going on?
Well, I mean, thank you very much, Kemi. Well, I beg to differ. These figures are not scary to any of us who are in the humanitarian sector because we've been shouting about this for the past 5 years. We saw this coming when Nigeria first, moved from 68 million poverty index, chasing India at the time, then went to 81 million. When we shouted, it sounded as if we didn't like the government or people hated the current administration and that nothing good comes out of this administration. But I mean, what would we expect when once in the life of one administration, we've gone through two self-inflicted recession,
How do you mean self-inflicted?
Unfortunately, we do not have a proper economic direction. The fiscal policies and the monetary policies are running they're not running pari passu, they're running at variance, unfortunately. I mean, clearly you would agree with me that a lot of the challenges we are faced with today in terms of the monetary policy are things that are not discussed even with those in charge of the fiscal.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I would agree with you. My challenge is I'm supposed to know a little bit about everything, But then, well, a little bit about everything. But then again, I wouldn't know if there were in-house discussions because I'm not privy to that space. But then again, let's look at it. Yes, we must eliminate poverty, the poverty trap in Nigeria. But then we have Ghana. Yesterday, a friend sent something to me. He used to earn about 500,000 in equivalent of Nigerian naira. Today, the same 500,000, but he can't even get anything more than something worth 200,000 naira with it. Nigeria is not isolated from the rest of the world. Could it be a worldwide problem that Nigeria is now having to partake in?
Well, it's easy for us to, say, oh, it's a worldwide problem because there are one or two or three other countries or maybe a handful of a dozen other countries who are also having issues of cost of living. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at the issue of cost of living across the country, across the world, you realize clearly that, yes, you might have cost of living issues as a result of inflations or galloping inflations as a result of the war in Ukraine and probably a little bit of the challenges that came from the COVID-19 challenges for those countries who locked down 100% for upward of 8 to 9 months. Nigeria did not lock down for more than 3 months. And for that 3 months lockdown, we didn't have a major shock in terms of economic activities as a result of COVID-19. But you will say,
so could it have been that there was like something buoying us up, like a life buoy, that we kind of had?
Nigeria did not do what it ought to do, for example. I mean, when I say to you that you will agree with me clearly that the issues of fiscal activities and, of course, the monetary policies did not run side by side because they must be in tandem for you to have a proper economic growth, 1, 2. You do not run a country with a command and control economic policies as against a market-driven economy. We don't even know what we're even doing in Nigeria. So take a look, for example, oil is our major export and a critical component of our foreign exchange earner. Agriculture is the largest, producer of Nigeria's GDP. Today, we don't have agricultural activities.
That was okay. Wait, let me backtrack a little bit. Sorry, you said crude oil.
Let me just make my point.
Oh, no. Okay, because sometimes it's good to expound, some of these issues from what you have said.
I complete my point.
Okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm saying that, for example, oil is our major. We have oil as one of our major foreign exchange earners and a critical component of our GDP. Agriculture contributes tremendously, to our GDP. Because of the insecurities going on, we do not produce food the way we are supposed to produce food. That, as a result of that, we have very, very, very high inflation going on in the food sector. Today it's at 21%. In the oil sector, you have crude oil thefts that dropped the oil production to the point of as much as 700,000 barrels per day. We have 1.5 million allocation from OPEC. And from January till date, the state governments have not been able to receive a cover from the federal allocations and the rest of them.
Isn't that as a result of the PIA?
Well, the PIA was, you see, we're not even implementing the PIA, because if we implemented the PIA as passed and signed by the president, the subsidy should have been thrown away. Today we're paying 6 trillion subsidy.
No, you know why?
PIA says PIA says you should no longer pay subsidy.
Absolutely. But I am doing the pari passu. If you say that the government is not the governors are not getting from the crude oil, so to speak, is it not a component of the PIA? Now, if you now also say that it has not been fully implemented, could it be that it's a gradual process? You see, all of these questions I'm asking because you are someone in that field who should know.
The PIA is currently suspended until June 2023. It's not even been implemented. The only aspect they want to say that they're implementing is a partial commercialization of NNPC.
Okay, let's go back to this issue of poverty. According to the statistics I have before me, Ondo State is at 27%, but Sokoto State is at 90%. For me, that is really worrisome. It means that only 10% of the people in Sokoto State are living above poverty line. Are we leaving our northern brothers behind, or is it? Then what can we do, to stem the tide, especially up north?
I think so. In my view, the report talks about a multidimensional poverty, at senatorial district. And let me shock you, Kemi. If we take this multidimensional poverty index to local government, it will be worse than what you're seeing today. So we're talking about senatorial districts, and don't forget, from senatorial district, you break it down, you get what you call the federal constituencies. From the federal constituencies, you go down, you get what you call state constituencies. From state constituencies that make up the local government. So let's say from federal constituencies to local government, if you go further down, you will get worse report. Why? Nigeria, I have always described as a rural country, right? Because successive governments over the past 20 years have failed in their responsibility to give Nigeria a direction, both at the state level and at the federal level. I mean, local government areas do not exist anymore because the emperors, we call the governors today, have refused to obey the law and allow the local governments to operate. And not knowing that their inability to allow the local government to operate is one of the reasons why the poverty is growing at that level.
Now, that takes me to the local government autonomy bill that has gone through the state, because having looked at what you have said, yes, it is from the local government down to the rural areas. This penetration is not getting in. It shows that more than anything else, one of the most important things that we must do as a people is scream, cry, beg, fight to ensure that the local governments are autonomous. As it is, you have quite a number of states across board, across party lines, who have refused to sign the local government bill into law. What do we have to do to ensure that this is done?
So I think one of the key things we need to do, which for me I call the low-hanging fruit, is that one, even if tomorrow Nigeria gives the local governments the autonomy they deserve, and that many of us have been shouting over the years, it's not just enough, because if you do not have credible electioneering process or leadership recruitment process at that local government level, you're going to have worse than what you have today at the state level, where the governors are the emperors. If the votes do not count and the people are not the ones who are responsible for choosing their representatives or their local government chairman, their councillors, and the rest of them, when you get people who go in there who do not understand what they're supposed to do, they get in there, spend their 3 or 4 years, and make all the money for themselves and get out, and the poverty state continues to grow. So clearly, number one, as it stands today, the local government is clearly responsible for repairs of roads in the local government, construction of roads, primary schools, primary health centers, and the rest of them. So we don't have that existing at that level. So when you look at the multidimensional nature of this poverty index report, you will see that it cuts across all sectors and different sectors. Okay, so you're looking at deprivation across health, deprivation across education, living standard, absence of work, and of course certain shocks that come as a result of inactions by the state actors. So when you look at it critically, you find out that there are 5 states that are, clearly chosen as the lowest across board. And these 5 states include Sokoto, Taraba, Gombe, and what's the other state again? We talk about. I think Bayelsa is also one of the states that was also clearly marked as one of the poorest states in Nigeria. So, what are the reasons why these states are this poor? Why? Because they don't have proper access to education, proper access to healthcare facilities, or even where you have healthcare facility, we probably do not have medical personnel to man those health facilities. Some of these state governors will come on national television and tell you that they are providing free education and free healthcare. But the question is, what is the access? If you have one healthcare facility in the entire senatorial district, which in some states, one senatorial district is about 14 local government. So if you have one in 14 local government, how do you expect the people at the far-flung or the hard-to-reach areas to get this medical attention or medical facilities? You also have the issues of education. Many of the schools in the north are not operating, or even they are not operating optimally as a result of insecurity. These are also major contributors. So what do we do? First, we need to ensure that we develop or create strategies that is homogeneous to every locality. So let me give you an example. Let's say Anambra State, where I come from, where I'm very much familiar with. During the days of Governor Peter Obi in Anambra State, which continued with Obiano and of course Soludo today, they created what they call a local vigilante system, where the 171 communities that make up the Anambra State, each of them have what you call a vigilante system. That vigilante system fits into the security architecture of the state. With the police.
Well, so, the thing is, in truth, I know that because I used to live in Lagos, okay? I know that in Lagos State, for example, you have the neighborhood watch, and the neighborhood watch are actually people who live in that community. As a matter of fact, they have bicycles and they have uniforms. They live in that community and everybody knows, who they are, But let's look at because in trying to get Nigerians out of the poverty line, we also have to look at the economy. Nigeria's economy, unfortunately, is majorly dependent on oil. And in recent times, I do know that there has been calls, especially by this current government, to say, let's go back to the farms, let's feed ourselves, okay? Across the world, you do have people who are celebrating the fact that Nigeria is now self-sufficient in rice production and maybe exporting a little bit too. But let's look at the issue of agriculture. Back in the days when I was much younger, one of the songs we used to sing was, education without agriculture will eventually make people steal. Unfortunately, it looks like the dawn of that has come. We have become a people who would rather put a tie and a suit on than people who would actually cultivate, no matter how little, a farm or something. How do we, in looking at this, because if more people, you said about the security issues, okay, but if we have more people who have a positive disposition towards agriculture, perhaps we will start moving up, that ladder. I don't know what your take is on that.
Well, fantastic. But before I go into that agricultural issue, I want to show you a particular part of the report that is actually scary for me. Well, it take a look at the poor under 5 children in Nigeria. It represented 22.8 million, 85 million Nigerian children who are under 5, who are, the report shows they are 5. Nearly half of all Nigerians are under the age of 18, and that's about 47.2%. So according to the child MPI, 83.5% of children under 5 are poor. So what do you see here? And this shows clearly that the highest deprivations are in the indicator of child engagement, showing that over half of the poor children lack intellectual stimulation that is pivotal to early childhood development. So that's educational disadvantaged children you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Then your child poverty is prevalent in rural areas, with almost 90% of the rural children experiencing poverty. So what are we looking at here?
Well, the thing
most of
these
states
Emmanuel,
they talk about now, they're talking about child marriage.
Emmanuel, I'm coming.
Yes.
You know that for a child to be poor, it means that the parents are also poor. You understand? So you can have a parent who has 5 children. Because they are poor, the children are poor. And the education part of it, is very important. What is the way forward?
Are you talking about poverty of the mind? Are you talking about poverty?
No. I'm talking about economic poverty and educational poverty. Because if you have an educated parent, it's almost impossible that you will not go to school.
Okay, so education is quite relative in some parts of the Nigeria. So you talk about there are some people who had a different kind of education, not necessarily maybe the education you and I had, foreign education and all that. Some people had what I would call Islamic education.
True
and
that.
For them is religious, and as a result, they believe that they should grow and live their lives and raise their children based on what they understand as the tenets of their religion. And part of it is this issue also. They are not poor economically, but in their own understanding and orientation, they believe that at a particular age, 12, 13, 14, they should give their children out in marriage, and as a result, they do not care to educate those children. That is one of the really major drivers of this child poverty that we're talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So it's a critical factor.
But I do know that in some parts of the north, for example, it's been said now that you can no longer give out your child, below the age of 18, for marriage. I know there's a law like that subsists in Borno State. I don't know of the other states, but that brings me to the issue of. I
haven't seen that law either.
It's there. You might have to Google it. You might have to Google it. It's. I think it was said during the Kashim Shettima era as governor that if you do not educate your child, you'll be dealt with. If you also do not,
it's a policy, it's not a law.
Okay, it's a policy. Okay, sorry, a policy.
Not a law.
Okay, a policy. So that you also have to send your children to school, and you must not give them out before 18. So I think it's somewhere there, in Borno State. I don't know of the other states, but then let's look at this orientation issue across board. Nigerians seem to need a lot of orientation, regardless of whether poverty line, that's one, patriotism line, that's another one. But then let's look at this orientation. What would be the best way to take these things to to the rural areas? What will be the best way to ensure that the people in the rural area get the proper type of orientation that makes them understand that they have to do some of the things they need to do to also get out of poverty? Because it's one thing, my people say that it is the child who lifts up his hand that the parents carry, right? So it is one thing to want to lift people out of poverty, right? It's another thing for the people to be willing to also get out of poverty. So that takes us to orientation. How do we deal with that?
So if you have 100 children and they all lift up their hand, can you carry all of them?
We will start carrying them one by one.
Okay.
Yes.
What's the proverb? Okay, so quickly for me. So one of the key indicators of the drivers of poverty we've mentioned is child privation, child poverty, then child marriage. Then we also looked at the lack of access to education, lack of access to healthcare, and of course insecurity and the rest of them. So I think all we simply need to do is to reverse some of these things. Okay, so how do you reverse them? So I think we'll start. One of the biggest ways to start this is to take a look at what is going on in other climes. Somebody might say, oh, that Ghana has about 40-something% inflation. Yes, Ghana's economy is smaller than Nigeria's economy, so you cannot say that. So a lot of other economies of the world that are bigger than Nigerian economy, they have very high inflation, but they are not suffering what we are suffering. US has one of the poorest and the lowest growth today in the world, but their inflation figures are dropping significantly, and the economy is also growing significantly. So you do not have that kind of.
But the UK just got into recession, if to the best of my knowledge.
The UK got into recession, but it's not also affecting their cost of living the way it's affecting Nigeria today. It's not throwing people into poverty. Rather, their struggles is higher. The level of their level of misery cannot be compared to the misery in Nigeria. The Nigeria misery index.
Okay.
No,
Well. I don't know. Because right
this
now,
report clearly says that 133 million Nigerians are in poverty.
It's all.
How
It's
many
all.
people in the UK are in poverty?
It's also a function of what we are allowed to see and what we are willing to see. But that said,
But the figures are there.
Well, that said, this is where I want to say a very big thank you to you, Osemeka Emmanuel, for being a part of the Super Citizen at Sunrise this morning. Of course, we will have a more robust conversation with regards to this sometime very soon. But regardless of that, before we go, I'd like you to drop a thing or two, something hopeful for the rest of Nigerians so that they have something to take home.
So, talking to Nigerians now, what I say to Nigerians every day of my life is that I say, look, I've worked in the rural communities and I've seen the absence of the presence of government, and I've seen that representative government is also equally absent. Why? Because people are not living up to their responsibility when elected. So we have a window of opportunity come 2023. Nigerians, get your PVCs, look around you amongst the people who are contesting already, because it's already late to select different people. Look around you, find the people that are going to represent you, find the people that understand and speak to the challenges of Nigeria today, and who are willing to provide solutions, and people who are ready to be held accountable when the time comes. It's not just enough to make promises, but people who are willing and ready and humble enough to say, yes, I am representing you, I've made mistake here, and I'm going to correct it. And people who have a track record of representation for the people and by the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Osemeka. That's our package this morning on the Super Citizen at Sunrise. It's important more than anything else, okay, that right now, kindly pay attention to who's going to be your representative across board, who's going to stand for you, who's going to be there for you. But most importantly, remember that there is no magic wand anybody's coming with. We're all going to have to put in all the work to ensure that this country becomes a nation that is worthy to be to call our own, and also one that we can bequeath to our children and those yet unborn. My name is Kemi Ashiko. My loved ones call me Kem, and I like it that way. Do have a great weekend.
Make we join our hearts to build a nation of our dream. Citizen FM. Citizen FM. Your problem is my problem and my joy is your joy. Citizen FM. Citizen FM. Make we join our hearts to build a nation of our dream. Citizen FM. Citizen FM. Your problem is my problem and my joy is